Good afternoon, it's Joyful Hermit. What a day. It's just fascinating how when God is moving in our lives, and He's moving in them all the time, but as we become increasingly aware of His movement in our lives, that we have a lot of interactive forces going on, and we begin to experience movements of good, of God, and of good people in our lives, and of good creation, good forces, good thoughts, good feelings, good virtues. We start noticing the gifts of the Holy Spirit, such as peace or different things. But we also then have the forces of evil and the disruptions and the unexpected, I call it the devil is hijacking me, hijacks of the devil. And that can affect us greatly. But one means of dealing with it is to let the tears come, or to let the wounds reopen, forgive yet again, and understand that the reason the devil is hijacking and is attacking is because, and disrupting, or even taking our emotions from 1 minute one way into tears and just trying to get a grip going into physical therapy. That is because God is moving in our lives. God is putting us through some paces, or bringing us to another level of understanding and of existence, or even bringing us closer to leaving this world, which is a process of detaching from it, so that we can take heart, we can keep our equilibrium, and not let the demonic or the evil or the ugliness get to us, because we know the presence of the devil in our lives, the hijacks of the devil, are proof that good is happening. The devil doesn't bother with us much if we're on his team, but the devil will become involved. Evil does attack good. Evil is drawn to good because it wants to eradicate it. We see this in the media, in the news, just in the attitude toward Christians and Jewish people also. Christianity was born out of Judaism. Mary was a Jewish girl. Jesus was reared as a Jewish boy. So Christianity has flowed, came out of Judaism, was literally born out of Judaism into a new way. Christ brought this new way, and built, though, based upon what had developed beforehand. God moves in an order. He flows in a direction, and it's of increasing goodness. And when we get off track in major ways, he realizes that we need more formation, something more. So he became man in order to teach us and to sacrifice and to show, visibly, viscerally, how we are, that we are called to good, but yet forces of evil try to kill good. That's the devil. That's the darkness. It's the forces of that are intermixed in our own selves that we struggle against also. Yet we yearn for good. We yearn for God. So I woke up this morning Well, last night I put a video up, but it was too long and it was probably hokey seeming or whatever, and maybe depressing a little bit. And I might do it again. I might try it again, but make it shorter. Some of you saw it. But it was of another bad situation at the dog park involving my dog this time, Lovey. So, being put upon by some adults from a mere accident. Um, so, and it happened maybe 4 days or 5 days after another dog had an accident, and a man was angry and threatening in a negative way as far as just his attitude, his actions, and claiming that this woman's dog was always mean to his dog. And the dog was maybe injured. I hope not its back, but I saw the first puppy 5 or 6 days ago now, rolled, stumbled and rolled, and his back did roll in an awkward way. And he yelped, the yelp of a dog makes when they're hurt, but didn't keep up. It's a very good natured, and it's a puppy, maybe 7 months old now. And the other dog had been running behind it and then stepped on it. So, and I think the other dog was probably causing this other dog to run, not being aggressive, not fighting or anything, but the dogs will do that. They go into chase mode. My two chase each other around when they're at the dog park, and they do growl and carry on, and Mercy hisses and snorts, and Lovey uses his paws and uses his big mouth and like that, and doesn't have any more ear fur to get because the groomer had to cut off the other ear hair to make it even with her other ear, because he had already, pulled off the hair at the bottom of one of her ears. So no skin. He never bites. He's very loving, but they play like that and roughhouse. But that last night, Lovey did the same thing, and I saw it was the same action. A puppy that was bigger than Mercy, so not a small puppy, but running along, and Lovey was following it. That puppy fell, and Lovey stepped on it by accident. It was kept going, and when you have another dog in front of you fall or stumble, they can't always just stop immediately. And that puppy yelped, and the young girl, who's a college girl who owns the dog, it's her second dog. She has 2 dogs now, and got upset. But an older couple, they were in their 30s. A man who this other woman had met at the dog park, but he does not have a dog. He was hanging around there, and maybe it's been a month ago or more, 6 weeks ago. But anyway, it's not a good situation. But he and this woman that got attached to this man, and we're sort of wondering if he's a drug person, and she has started using, because it's noted she's lost weight and is very pale, and had issues, psychological issues or emotional issues, anxiety disorder, is not able to work, and does anything the man says to do, under his control now. Not overtly, but subtly. But it got awful for my dog. The man would yell at him and push him, and the woman too. They would start negatively, and they worked up the college student against my dog. So I had to keep my dog away for his safety, and I didn't want my dog to develop any kind of an animosity toward male because he doesn't have men in his life, and definitely not yelled at by a man, or his, acting like he was going to hit Lovey. But Lovey loves dogs, and it was hard. He wanted to go play with them. But he ended up staying with Mercy and me, and we did the ball when they would get out there, though, and he would get tempted to go over. So I started using the danger word, and danger, and come back. And my dogs know that word. They came back, and they could tell by my voice, because I couldn't risk. And also, Lovey didn't deserve to be rejected and bad-mouthed, and this negative energy and essence. Dogs are very sensitive. They can tell when I'm not feeling well, and they don't need that ugliness. So that was something last night then that was, and then afterwards another woman came over and wanted to tell me, what they were saying and all, but she also wanted to know why I was using the word danger to call him. And she says, well, was that because your dog was dangerous? When she knew it wasn't. Were you considering them danger? And I said, no, I was very honest. I said, they are danger for my dog. My dog I'm not going to allow my dog to be subjected to adults who are negative and ugly about my dog or any dog, because, and I said it had happened to this other dog. But we all know this other dog is fine. Lovey's rambunctious, and he's not easy to train. A trainer has told me doesn't have the attention, innate attention. He's busy. He's always looking around, and he's needy for love and attention more than Mercy is. So he is loving and wants to play, and he loves people, and I cannot allow that to change. He needs to be respected as a creature of God and as a very sweet creature, albeit an active one. And he's doing better with not standing up on people and all, but at times he can't help himself. He gets overjoyed or overly excited to see somebody and to want them, and then he'll roll on the ground, get down, and if they react, because he's a scaredy dog, he's not a aggressor, but he wants attention, and he'll take negative attention. But it was getting, God gave that dog to me to take care of and to protect, and it was getting bad for Lovey to be around over there. And I also didn't want to risk that he would accidentally step on that dog, or it was the first time that pup had come to the dog park, even though it's a big pup, and it yelped because it was scared. Hadn't played with any other dogs other than his little tiny older dog that the girl also has, a little tiny one, who's not, he's slowed down since he's older and stuff. So, but this morning, then first thing, after I always read my scriptures and what saints this site sends me for the day, but then I noticed something from a cousin, and they were photos of them gathering in New York. They live in New York State, and had all gathered, my 4 cousins. Good to see their photos and them together with one of the cousins' sons and his wife, a year anniversary from their wedding. And in one of the photos, at first I didn't recognize, but it was a photo of my son and his wife, who I've never met. And this was terrible. I couldn't even think of her first name for a minute or so. I've never met her. My son cut me off a year and a half ago. My friends and family think, a couple people in my family, think probably he'd gotten aligned with my ex-husband, his dad, who's a narcissistic sociopath, and but very successful person, and had been in career, and but the typical symptoms: lying, not, needing a lot of glory and being great, and to build a low self-esteem within, but with the narcissism. So is very charming, manipulative, will say anything to impress others that he is important and successful, and to have people want him and sort of control then in that way. And I had been his target even in our marriage. He became envious and resentful of my gifts and talents, even though he had his own. But they're not satisfied. They don't want competition, and need to feel as if they are number one, not just in a relationship, but to others around. So even after, and he didn't want to be married to me anymore. He had been cheating all through, and a great deal of cheating, as I found out. He admitted a couple of them, but and of course I didn't know he was a narcissistic sociopath when I married him, or even until something happened after with one of our children that some psychologists had to meet with him, and the one of them told me, said this is what he is, and how on earth did you ever get mixed up with him? Well, they're very clever and intelligent, so they have a game, and they don't understand, though. They don't realize they are so used to building themselves up. When they say something, it doesn't register that it's not true to them. They believe their lies, and they will turn things around. If you ever dare challenge them or expose, they will turn it all back on the person who's doing it. And it all depends on the degree to which they have this disorder as to how bad they get. And my ex was very bad. He got scary, and then he wanted me dead. And he was doing things, hiring things done, terrorizing us, really. Me, but I had the children for the bulk. And then when they refused to visit him when they were older, it got worse. Eventually, though, they did return to visit him when he remarried, and he had 3 children that were about their ages, and it was more fun for them, and they felt safer. And I think her children appreciated when they would come, because he wasn't good to her children. And anyway, it's just one of those things. But I see my son's photo, and I was thrilled that my cousins had included him, because they're good people. And but it really tore me up, because of the whole thing that he has totally cut me off. I mean, totally. I didn't even know he had changed jobs to another network. And I did do some research online. A different cousin had seen it maybe a month or 2 months ago, month and a half ago or something, that he had changed networks, television networks. So So, it just made me sad this morning, very sad. And the devil was involved in that. It's felt that my ex-husband influenced him when my son got increasingly involved and aligned with his dad. After I'd gotten him through college, I didn't realize it had gone way back then and had been growing their connections. So he's influenced. But I had noticed that when my son would call at times, he would get very bullying with me on the phone, or sort of flip out and angry, even when I got Mercy, got my first dog, got way out of line, said terrible things. He didn't want me to have a doggy. We had a dog before, and the dog got separation anxiety and got very destructive, and I had to get rid of the dog. So, and it was hard, very hard. But he was convinced, I should never have another dog and all that. And I was sort of concerned too. But with 2 dogs, it's a little better, except Lovey has separation anxiety. So I can't leave them alone in the house. They do damage. They get angry if I'm not with them. Part of it's just because we're together so much, and there's no one else interacting also. So that upset me. I had physical therapy, and I went in crying, trying to get a grip. And maybe halfway through my physical therapy, I was able to tell the physical therapist, why I was upset. And he knows, I've been going there for about a year. So, and I'll be a permanent patient because of the increasing my middle of my back. I have 3 discs that are disintegrated. So I'm going to try an injection. They say they don't think it'll go into the dural space. So I don't want the arachnoiditis getting worse. But I was talking to the physical therapist about narcissistic sociopaths, and he said, it's this, you're describing my ex-wife. And so it's something that can happen to women and men, narcissistic sociopath. Increasingly now with women, I think because roles are shifting in society, and women are more out competing in the workforce and rising in prominence, and it's shifting male behavior. Society is changing. It's a cultural shift of men increasingly then becoming less dominant and responsible, even in divorces. And now it's more women are the cause of divorces, are the ones doing the leaving and cheating and things, having affairs. So and women increasingly wanting more power and position and privilege and prestige, and more assertive, which is okay to be assertive, but also more aggressive, scrambling over, crawling, climbing over other people to get known, or doing in others. So that and then the narcissism has increased in women a great deal. I've noticed that in social media, more and more men talking about narcissistic relationships they've had with women who are the narcissists, and who damage them, who try, who it causes them damage, emotional and psychological. So it's an interesting topic, and it's something that everything's connected with God and the spiritual life. It's very much, and sociopath with the lying and the manipulation of others and the control, and having a target, someone who threatens them subconsciously or even consciously. Usually they don't acknowledge these things because their narcissism won't let them. They're above all that. They're in control. They're great. They're wonderful, and they wouldn't have any flaws, But they then that person becomes the target, and they, even if they have left the person, they will continue. Like my ex-husband told me, he vowed that he was going to destroy me, and that he would take everything I ever had and ruin me. Well, I was already ruined from my spine, and I wasn't at first, but then I had to have the spine surgery, and that failed, and I got arachnoiditis, and I was permanently disabled. So he didn't need to destroy my career, but he was working on it. And would have had I gotten into any position, higher position. I was offered one, but I couldn't do that. I needed to be a classroom teacher while the children were little. And that only was under 2 years, and my back just totally gave out. But he did other things financially. And he said he would take the children, and he tried to get the son, get custody. But that was the miracle in court we had, where we were allowed to get 2,200 miles away. The judge, fortuitously, by the grace of God, saw through. And when he did, the ex really erupted. And his lawyer, a bailiff, they got the judge out of there. I was whisked out of there by my lawyer and the woman who had driven me there. And we went down some other hallway, and I wasn't allowed to stay in my home that night. Had to get the children and go to some place that he never knew of. Stay with a person that he had no idea where we would be. But he did do damage to the rental house I was in by then. And because I had sold my house to be ready to leave. And that's a whole nother miraculous story too, but it can get very dangerous, those people. And that's how I realized with this situation I was having for 17 years with online person, internet thing, why I was reacting. It was because I hadn't recognized that I was dealing with the same kind of situation or personality that I had dealt with before. And there's a reason why we sometimes will get aligned with someone or pick up with someone like that. And or they are attracted to us too. It's usually the other person is very empathic. My physical therapist and I talked about it then. And because I said, so you too, I said, and I bet you had no idea either how this person was. Because it's masked, very well masked. They're very high functioning in their careers and in interactions. And the lie also is they mask their behaviors, their tempers, their control, their manipulations. They're always wanting to be on top, to win, to be superior to anyone else. So, yet they like successful. They like that. They, as far as if you're going to relate with someone, they want someone successful. And someone that makes them look good, attractive person, talented, because that makes them look good. Look at my wife, look at my husband, builds their ego all the more. But if you ever challenge them or expose, it can get very bad, and you have to basically not and get away. So for Dan, who had a wonderful idea of myself and this other person having a live, open chat to work out the situation and to come to an agreement or even become friends or whatever, or collegial, which I would like, but I realize that doesn't happen if you're dealing with that personality type. It won't. Their needs are such, and their drive is such that it would take a recognition on their part, and they can't, because then that reduces their sense of self, and they can't do that. They can't consciously see themselves as being in the wrong, or it's just I know. See, I went through all this, but I didn't recognize it in the other gender, and until just recently, and then I didn't recognize why I was reacting and why it was really getting to me emotionally, psychologically. And that was because of all the trauma I had been through with my husband. Even in the marriage, I was reduced over time. And it was interesting listening to the physical therapist, a male, who's maybe early 50, 51, 52 maybe. And he's married again and has two young children. He has two older children with the wife. And he's 20 years younger than me or more. 22 years younger, I think. So he, and a very giving person, loving, good, empathic, caring, honest to a fault, gentle. And I said, that's it. See, and trying to help, and can't believe that someone is acting like that or is treating us like that or doing it. So before long we're reduced. But I knew enough in this other situation, the one I was having for 17 years online, but I didn't put it all together to know that you really just have to get away. But how do you get away online? You can't really, unless you totally change. Well, I tried changing my titles. I changed modality, changed genre. And so then you have to just take it. But online, if someone is reducing you, invalidating you, then after a while it's, are you going to go through all this for one or two fleeting people or is it better to use your time just reading your books and doing your praying and all? But no, I decided no. In scripture, Jesus went after the one sheep mattered, and in the Old Testament, was it Jeremiah, or maybe no, it was, I think, Jonah. Somebody was saying, would you save humanity if it was down to even one person left who loved you, God, or obeyed you? And yes, he would. He would still do. So I will do, even if it's just for me, because talking these things over as if to someone, it was like writing. Writers write for an audience, to feel like you're writing as if someone is listening or reading and giving feedback. And that's why the comments are very helpful to me. Your comments are. and the suggestions and Dan's suggestions of trying to have this online working out. But you have to understand that personality and what works and doesn't work. And that wouldn't work. The person would love to have the opportunity but it would become one of superiority and having to win still. So that's the problem. But I do think that the prayers and my attempted, boggled, seemingly, fraternal correction, which usually that personality type will not take. Like my ex-husband, I mean, even in marriage, he became enraged his temper. And if you ever pointed out something, even a lie, and it took a long time for me to catch on to lies, because he lies about everything, and they sincerely believe everything they say is true. They believe their own lies. But this other person, I'm not saying that this other person online is, but it seems to have the same mode of some way, but not at all to the point that my husband did. Now the physical therapist's wife, yes, his co-workers even had to get restraining orders. We're at that point. That woman was trying to destroy his career. And that would have happened to me. Like I say, my life was in danger with my ex-husband. Suspected that he had hired someone to shoot the bedroom window in the evening. It was evening from the other side of a fence. The light was on. I was sitting up in the bed. Obviously, whoever did not see the children laying on the bed beside me, around me. And it was bad. We hit the floor. I got the light off, reached up the light, got a bedside light, got it turned off, and warned the neighbors. But they weren't at threat. I thought maybe they were. I didn't. But there was a pounding at the door. The kids thought, I won't go into that story. It was a nightmare, but it all came back to me last night. See, I get these flashbacks. It's terrible. But I don't think it will work. It's a great idea, Dan. And I tried responding to you, but it kept not getting. My laptop wouldn't put the response through. My explanation to you of why. Not a good idea. Great idea, but not with the personality type. So even that, the interference with the laptop. I've had physical poltergeist interferences with the devil. I've had so much experience with the demonic that it becomes difficult. And I'm increasingly in one of those phases now of a lot of demonic interference. And it's because of a possibility that I might do. And I'm not sure. I'm trying to get some kind of an answer from God, if it's something he wants or if it is of benefit. And today I've had this situation also, this back and forth going on for about 5 days now or more, since this canon lawyer chancellor talked to me on the phone. And I'm really in tremendous conflict because I've had a lot of awful things happen to me as a Catholic. And brutal, a lot of persecution. Really more from Catholics than from Protestants. But I'm away from Protestants. when I was in parishes, I wasn't around Protestants. I had my group. I could more fully embrace my Catholic life. When I left my hometown, and could just fully embrace Catholicism then, because I didn't, in a city I went to, I didn't have any connections with any Protestants then. So just parish people. And it was really a lot of demonic, it's as if the devil is trying to get me out of the Catholic Church. But then logically you start to think, who would remain when you're so put upon all the time? It's like I battle it. I battle the logic of normalcy with having to deal with the supernatural realm of good and evil in that realm. And then of mystics who tended to have people put on them, attacking them. I think of Joan of Arc a lot. Even my spiritual father told me to meditate on her and to keep in mind that it was bishops and priests and Catholic parishioners themselves who were throwing wood on her fire, literally and in essence. It was the Catholic bishops who did her in and had her executed, had her burned at the stake. So there's that reality, but then the logic is well, we've moved away from doing that to people. That we don't go after our own. But yes, they do. See, it's the devil does these things, and it must be the mystical experiences that they envy. But see, the Protestants, the few who, if I'm any one place any length of time, they sense it. And so, but they would just ask, well, are you psychic or something? See, that was how they could deal with it. And they sort of thought, wow, that's sort of weird. That's weird, but sort of neat, helpful to us a little bit. Because, if I was shown something, I could, and Dr. H would work with me on not freaking people out, but just saying, well, I think you really need to see a doctor, or something, and try to encourage them without saying how I knew or saw. But one woman did figure out what, she says, well, how do you know these things? Are you one of those psychics or something? And how did you know he should go to a doctor? Because yes, he's got this terrible sinus infection. Well, I had seen through his sinuses, just right through his face, into his bones. It's all infected, and was warned, that he was sick. It was gonna get bad. And other, meant people who were dying or different things. Or who would die. And so I just live a bizarre life. And then the devil is always then trying to interfere with my helping others. And so innately I persevere all the more, wanting to help. And so did the physical therapist admit that he's a helper, a carer. And tried with his now ex-wife. And the more you try, the more you're not getting anywhere. But I do want to say this, that this online person has put up a most lovely video of a religious sister giving a beautiful talk online. And it's giving me hope that part of what I was trying to get across has hit home. And that is to move into what will edify others. And also edifying others is helping to be aware of the battle of evil and good, evil against good, and that includes the rampant rise of personality disorders in society all over the world. There's an increase of personality disorders that go over the line of what is our natural mix of disorder in us, of sin and disorder. So it's good to know about them, because I think had I recognized sooner this other situation, I would have known what to do and what not to do. And ultimately, God will handle things. But as my spiritual father used to say, this old Irish priest, God gave you a brain, you're supposed to use it too. And even with hermit life, when, he didn't want me to become odd and all, and he said, well, he says, we live in this time period. He said it would be pretty hard to pray if you're frozen to death without any heat. He was very practical, and he says it sort of goes along with this Blessed Richard rule. Pretty hard to pray or to live your hermit life if you're dying from malnutrition, from fasting all the time. So everything in moderation, but not to live with what God gives us, what we have in life, and to praise God for it, to enjoy. And there's something to be said about being comfortable. I had mentioned to my neighbor a few days ago that I'm not getting a thing done, that I'm into so much pain that all I do is rest in bed, except to take the dogs out and to the dog park for an hour at night and feed them, and trying to read and do things. But it's hard when I'm in a lot of pain to read or to do anything even, except just hang out with God and ponder, hang out with God and pray, ponder. Ponder for me is the same as praying anymore. Hanging out with God is praying. It's all prayer. It's all prayer. When we come to a point where we are in God and He is in us, and we know it and we live it. It has become who we are. But she said, my neighbor said, there's something to be said about being comfortable. It's not a terrible thing to be comfortable, as best we can, given that we'll never really be comfortable in our bodies. They're cumbrous. They're not comfortable, even if you don't feel pain. It took me a good 2 years after the accident, too. And even after the surgery, when the pain was upsized a great deal in 87, it took a good 2 years for me to no longer remember what it was like before. And I had to stop watching. I didn't watch news in particular, or anything that was realistic, because it was so painful to see other people walking or doing things with their bodies, not even glorifying God that it didn't hurt. It's like they don't get, they could walk steps without agony, and so it was hard to see, and it was interfering with my forgetting what it was like. So just sort of rambling here, but I wanted to mention this, that educate yourself on narcissism. Google it. Educate yourself on the symptoms, on how people react. Also, to make sure that you keep yourself in check. Keep ourselves in check. And then also sociopathy, sociopath. And the combination often goes together. And the reason it becomes, when we think that we are right and have that inner insecurity that we don't even recognize, but get into narcissism, we never think that there's anything wrong with us, so we don't get help. And if someone suggests it, it can really cause a reaction, a very negative reaction. And that's why most people know, who are familiar with it, the best thing you can do is get away from the person. But and I don't think I'll need to. I'm trusting God that this person will really make the effort to keep to what inspires that person and will uplift people also, and that I too will strive in that. I certainly used to, but for me, other than once or twice, maybe talking about canon law or hermit life or little bits and pieces of it, that's not anything that anyone needs to know or focus on. It's just a vocation like any vocation. It would be as if I would be, talking about marriage or something. But to know enough to know ourselves, an old desert father said famously, go into yourself. How did it go? Something to the effect, go into yourself and learn about yourself. Know yourself. If we know ourselves well, we can then, I think, better relate and communicate with God, and become one with God eventually. Knowing ourselves, we learn our faults. Doing this examination of our conscience will help. And then we have many tools in our time. The internet, it has many good uses, and one is to learn. Learn what disorders are out there and how to avoid, how to grow in virtues and get rid of our vices. And we're not perfect. It's very hard to think that we could be in this lifetime. It is a possibility. It takes a lot of grace of God and His will and our constant effort. And also, if we're born with natural graces. And even so, we might just have glimpses of union with God on earth, not be fully united on earth. That most often happens after, when we continue our progression and when we become pure enough to be united with God, who is pure love. But we can certainly become aware of the virtues, and then our daily life is practice time. That's basically what we're doing here, is practicing and growing in holiness, practicing the presence of God, practicing virtues and growth in holiness, and trying to rid out our own vices. So do some of that. I think I'm going to do a second video on another aspect of this I want to zero in on, but learn about, I think just start with the narcissism and the sociopath. And if you want, learn about obsessive compulsive personality disorder. I think we can pinpoint obsessive compulsive disorder, which includes excessive hand washing, and everything has to be in order. But obsessive compulsive personality disorder is more prevalent and less noticed in ourselves and in others. But it is also one that the person then grows to consider themselves as being perfect or darn near, and everybody else is not. And they become obsessed with trying to help others become perfect. Say if they're married to someone, all of a sudden all their faults stand out. Their own, of course, don't to themselves. And you can sort of find it humorous or think, how could anyone not see themselves doing this? Lots of lists and instructions for others, and everything has to be put in order. Those aspects of the obsessive compulsive part are similar. Everything clean and neat and tidy, but very rule oriented. And getting a significant other to do what, do that, be that way, and pointing out all their flaws or see all their flaws. Sometimes the other person's flaws can be so dominant to the obsessive compulsive personality disorder that they can barely tolerate being around the person, and so are constantly obsessed with trying to get that person, control that person to be as good as they are. See, it's when it gets out of bounds, because I could say, well, that's what I'm encouraging. I'm encouraging people to be their best. I'm encouraging myself. And as I found from the pickleball podcast, the greatest athletes, the greatest in any sport, are the ones who have come to the level where they compete against themselves. It doesn't matter, they don't have to compete against another person. When they are competing against another person, to them, they're competing against themselves. How can I better myself from the last game I played? And I'm going to watch this documentary that Christopher made on, if you read in the comments, you can see the documentary site to go to on fencing, because he found the very same thing that I did from the pickleball podcast. So much we can learn from the temporal world, such as from a sport, and the training and discipline in a sport that we can apply to our own lives in striving for the virtues and in living our lives in a more holy manner, and improving in holiness and in goodness. As Richard Roll says, a big portion of his focus is on just being good, learning to be good. So stop there. God bless you all, and God bless His real presence in us.